Thank you for this. It's great. Oh, both that I really love on the live stream.
It's immaterial.
Can I ask the beautiful woman in the back in black, can you hear me? Yes? Okay. All right. You can hear me too if I talk without a mic? All right.
Should you be on the right?
All my business.
Well, no, not necessarily. It shouldn't be on the right.
All right, Alyssa, ladies, you want to come? Hi, so I want to thank everyone for coming tonight. This is the Atamian Hovsepian Curatorial practice. We're an art gallery and we curate. There are a couple of people I want to thank. First of all, my beautiful and brilliant colleague Tamar, who I started the gallery with, Hovsepian, Hovsepian is our new intern from Montreal, and Lily Hovsepian is our beautiful intern from Armenia, which is back there somewhere. Lily, you want to raise your hand? There she is. They helped us put this all together. So we have been curating for over 10 years, curating together for about a year, and this gallery is now 5 weeks old. And we want to do cultural programming, and this is the first event. So I'm thrilled to have Kyle Smith. Kyle is a critic, a novelist, and a columnist. He's currently the film critic for the Wall Street Journal, the theater critic for the New Criterion. I love reading the New Criterion, so I'm happy to have you here. He was critical art for National Review. He's a film critic columnist for New York Post, or was, and a contributor to Wall Street Journal, People, New York, Forbes, New York Times, and commentary. So he's quite prolific.
He's the current film critic.
He's current film critic for Wall Street Journal, so maybe a round of applause today. So Jonathan and I have known each other now for how long, 20 years maybe? I consider him a good friend. He used to be my editor when I was a dance critic at the New York Press. I can't even remember the 25 years ago, which unfortunately folded, but it was a glorious publication. It was actually, you could say whatever the hell you wanted in the New York Press, and I don't care. Like Bill was. So he was a great editor. He is one of the best playwrights in America. Pushkin, if you haven't seen it, you should somehow or get a copy of it. It was considered one of the 4 best plays in 2018 by the Wall Street Journal, but I don't think that's because Kyle said that. I'm sure it was. Yeah. So he has a new novel called City which I just read. It's a really fun murder mystery, kind of Nathaniel West. You know, you'll talk about it a little bit. There's an actress and a murderer. The rest I can't really divulge, but it's a really good read. He, you know, is just incredibly talented as well. And Kirkus Reviews called his new novel light literary entertainment at its best. So you don't get much better than that. I'm gonna let the 2 of you discuss City of Angels. Kyle also has books published, so maybe we can talk about that at some point. I was thinking there's a writer's guild strike. There's also the whole Me Too with Harvey Weinstein and what's happened with that. Maybe you guys want to talk about that, but I'm going to give them the floor to discuss whatever they want. So thanks again for being here. Maybe a round of applause for Jonathan.
Do we have to, can people hear me in the back?
You can hear me, yeah, my voice is not much.
Speak
Speak slower.
You have microphones. Was I speaking too quickly? Sorry.
I just
Yeah.
I think we don't need the mics, right? Do we don't need, no?
Well, I think people would like you to use one, but up to you guys.
Oh, everyone come closer. Just move closer.
People in the back say they can hear us, I mean, the acoustics are pretty strong. Okay, I think they're okay.
So can I say something about your novels?
No, we're here to talk about your great book.
No, so Kyle is going to read from City of Angels first.
Yes. So, book begins very strong. There's an up-and-coming actress. Her real name is Kelly Lanai, but she's changed it to Vincenza. And she finds a body in her trunk. And that was to be the body of a big movie star who she used to date. And it's kind of a noir kind of a mystery. I would say the difference is in a mystery what you really care about is who's done it, whereas in a noir you really care about the overarching kind of the poisonous, toxic atmosphere. And to me, it's like Tom Wolfe wrote a noir because it goes into the mind of all these people, and it's very broad. It's like a bonfire of the vanities, about 1/3 length is bonfire of the vanities. It's like a bonfire of the vanities in LA, where you meet all these various types of people, and they're all playing an angle. And as my 11-year-old daughter pointed out, there's a typo on the cover of the book. It's supposed to be City of Angels, she said. So the standards have decayed. No. So the angles, I thought to summarize what you're doing perfectly. Billy had that feeling he often did in Los Angeles, that everything was a transaction. And if you were overly aggressive in declaring that a purchase and sale had been made, you invited the opposite party in the deal to cancel it and renegotiate the terms. So every sexual encounter, every meeting, every casual, oh hi, in a coffee shop, it's all adding up to everyone's trying to, get their scripts filmed or get to the next drawing block. And there's all these brilliant little asides, like there's the actress has the silicone was made out of sand, and there's an actress who has so much silicone in her that you said she's a threat to the world's deserts and beaches. It's a very funny book, and the way you get inside the minds of all these different kinds of characters. There's even a Guatemalan maid who turns out to be a key figure because she finds a gun that has recently been used. How do you get inside the minds of all these characters? And is LA really that cynical? Is it really that harsh and nasty? Is that really unrealistic?
Yeah, I think so. After I started to get a reputation as a playwright, I went out to live in LA for a while, not very long. And I was already dating my wife, who's sitting in the second row. And we were immediately very attached to each other. And I didn't immediately find work, so I came back, and not so long after we got married. But going out and spending time there, I actually came to really love the city. I really, really like LA. But a friend of mine from childhood who lives out there and is not in the entertainment industry said to me something about it. He said, LA is the most wonderful city if you're not in the entertainment industry. And I think that's actually true. It's got fantastic weather. It's got a lot of the great cultural institutions that we have in Europe, in some cases better. And, there's better, in many ways, better theater in Los Angeles than New York, because there are more actors and often better actors. It's got obviously the film industry, and it's got this amazing thing, the Huntington Library. If you've never been to LA, or you've been to LA and you've never been there, you should go. It's fantastic. It's one of the best public gardens, and it's an amazing art museum. It's got all these wonderful, wonderful things, but there's an enormous amount of backstabbing and dissembling and phoniness. It really is true. I mean, that is the way the business works. So yeah. By the way, forgive me for completely changing the subject. I wanted to say a few words of praise about several people, starting with Kyle. I mentioned to Chris what a terrific novelist Kyle is, and I am here to try and sell some books. But the reason I met Kyle is Todd, who's here, who's wearing the David Bowie shirt. And Todd mentioned in passing one day, I've known Todd for many years, that he knew Kyle. And I said, you have to introduce me, because I was a big fan of his writing. And if you don't know his writing, you should. He's such a terrific writer. He's very kindly said nice things about my writing, but he wrote 2 novels, which he said he didn't have copies of. We tried to get him to bring some copies. One of them is a really heartfelt book called Love Monkey, and it was turned into a CBS TV sitcom, which it did get a little bit of renown in some ways on the screen.
It was like a 1-hour dramedy. It was CBS was sort of not the right.
Well, we can have Kyle back to sign the
Yeah.
whenever you want. So.
But anyway,
I'm back in the fall.
he wrote one of the funniest novels I've ever read. Unbelievably funny novel. It's called A Christmas Caroline. You say Caroline or Caroline?
Caroline.
Caroline. It's about would you say Vogue or Harper's Bazaar?
Either.
An editor of a magazine like Vogue, who's a Scrooge-like character. So it's a retelling of the Scrooge story from the point of view of a woman who's an editor of one of these fashion magazines and needs some moral reformation. And it is screamingly funny. And actually, talking about the movie business, I told my friend Whit Stillman, some of you may know, the guy who wrote and directed Metropolitan, that he should really read it if he was looking for something to adapt. I think he's somebody had over for dinner many times. I so annoyed him telling me he had to read the book that I think he's never quite forgiven me for being a pest. But it is if you ask me what are the 10 funniest books I've ever read, it's definitely on that list. So I'm grateful that Chris, who has this wonderful art gallery, and by the way, I hope you notice this artist is James Gordon. He's been getting a huge amount of attention, and when they had the opening, there were celebrities here like the actor Dean Winters and so forth. If you're interested in collecting art, you might want to really take a look at this. So I want to mention both those things, but especially want to say Kyle is a fantastic writer, so I'm very grateful that he's agreed to be here today.
Yeah, if you want to do something fun, just read the quotes in Rotten Tomatoes of his reviews. If you know like really funny, smart, acerbic British critics, it kind of reads that way.
All right, we're here to celebrate.
But we're here to talk about Jonathan.
Not going to make it LA if you don't have the gift to promote yourself. Seeing this book that struck me, something that could have come in from like Curb Your Enthusiasm, is this woman's on the run from this dodgy church/cult/ sci-fi myth makers, and she's being trailed by these guys in a tan van. She goes to Griffith Park. She decides she's going to lose herself in the crowd of people hiking up the hills in Griffith Park. So she meets this nice couple who are like the same age as her parents, and it turns out they're not being nice to her for no reason. They're swingers. They want her to join them, and everything kind of goes off the rails in this novel, and in a very, very dryly funny way. Are you aware sort of the farcical nature of what you're doing? The way you kind of hold back. It's all. I thought it was very, very straight. It kind of reminded me of Evil and Law's book, The Loved One, which is a great Hollywood book. It revolves around a pet cemetery in LA, which is, I think it's the first law book I ever wrote. It's very, very short. No one ever really refers to it, but very funny and very spot on.
What book?
The Loved One, Evelyn Law's
45
or something like that.
Yeah.
So what were your influences in writing?
Well, yeah, that was one. That's a book I love. Like you, I think it's really screamingly funny. They made a movie, which by the way does not correspond to the book at all, but it's also very funny. But if you like Evil and Law, you should read it. It's a very, and he was a screenwriter in Hollywood for a while.
Right.
Yeah, he went out, and so I don't think that he met someone like there's this character in the book, Amy Thanatogenous, who's quite a bizarre character. I don't think he actually met such a person, but But yeah, that was definitely an influence. What I guess really the reason I decided to write the book was after spending some time in Los Angeles, I had picked up recent novels set in LA. And it struck me that they didn't really get certain details right. Particularly, they didn't really describe the experience of actors. And there are, people don't realize just how many actors there are in Los Angeles. There's something that, between actors and producers, there are, in a city of maybe 5 million people, I guess Los Angeles County has over 10 million people. There are literally hundreds of thousands of people who would be, I think somebody did a study that found there were over 100,000 people who describe themselves as producers. And there've got to be at least twice that many people who are actors or would-be actors. And they really don't get, most of the novels I picked up, they don't get the experiences of actors right. And so that was really, but books that I loved that were set in LA, that was definitely one. Obviously Nathaniel West's Day of the Locust. And it actually, if you like F. Scott Fitzgerald, the terrific collection of short stories he wrote called The Pat Hobby Stories are about a talentless screenwriter. And they're very funny, so they're a little bit like that too. But as you say, I wanted to write something that was realistic, but also had Tom Wolfe was a huge influence, yeah. But I hope maybe a little more pathetic.
Another great LA book is The Disenchanted, Bud Schulberg's book about working with Scott Fitzgerald.
First 80 pages.
I've never seen the name.
Yeah, first 80 pages.
Yes.
Yeah, that kind of goes off the rails.
I thought it was very fun. Can you trust anyone in LA? Because it seems like, in a sense, everyone is performing at all times, right? But it's like a character in the book. He becomes a big star in a Hot Rod series, and he's really just a mechanic. And you say, well, he can't even really act. He becomes like a global icon. One day he's a mechanic, and the next day he's a superstar. Is everyone performing? Is everyone just surface? Can you make friendships in LA?
Well, I think sometimes people will open up to you after you've known them for a while, and they'll tell you what they really think. But it's a weird business too, in that people here who have spent time in Los Angeles, been involved in the entertainment industry, will know what I'm talking about. It's considered bad form to criticize almost anyone. It's considered like you have poor manners, you're not trustworthy, and also that you're somehow like a Debbie Downer who should be avoided. Like you have some kind of, you have the cooties and you're going to give it to other people. So the weird thing is, even though it's a very cynical business, everybody's constantly being positive and upbeat. And if you're not positive and upbeat, you're a bad person, you should be avoided, which is also weird. And it's a place that also spawns all these cults. Yeah.
Jonathan, it's considered, sorry to jump on, I have a question. It's considered bad to speak ill of anyone or just anyone in the entertainment business?
I think anyone in the entertainment industry. To speak ill of, Trump, for instance, or speak ill of Ron DeSantis is obligatory.
So explain the Hollywood No. What is the Hollywood No?
You know what? This is an amazing project. We can't say yes right now, but we really want to stay in touch. We really want to know what happens with this, because you've just done some amazing things here, and we haven't seen anything like this, certainly in a long time. And you're on the right track.
And when people say, we love your script, we don't want to change a word, we're going to fast track this, what happens then?
Probably nothing. Yeah, probably nothing. But something which I did learn, which I didn't really understand, is they don't necessarily want to immediately replace the writer. That's a myth. And not only that, but you actually learn for the big projects, they don't even bother negotiating contracts. It's a business notorious for people going back on their word and lying, and you have to have contracts for actors. But actually, when they hire screenwriters for something like Mission Impossible movie, they actually don't even bother with contracts. They just say, we'll pay you. And everything's done kind of on a trust basis, because it has to be done so fast that you can't bother with contracts. And name writers, unlike actors, are considered reliable. So,
maybe there's a coincidence, but a character in your book has an idea to do a feminist remake of Fatal Attraction, which, since you wrote the book, has actually happened, right? There's a remake of Fatal Attraction on Paramount Plus, I believe.
Yeah, I gather I talked to somebody who was involved in it just a few weeks ago, and she told me it's slightly different in the book. Has anybody seen it? I haven't seen it.
What is it?
What's it called?
They did a Fatal Attraction.
It's another fatal attraction, but I assume
Yeah.
they didn't want to use it as like a stop this kind of thing.
Apparently, they focused on the ideas that it's about the Glenn Close character. I forget who the actress in the current version is. It's about how she's suffering from mental illness, and it's kind of a look at mental illness. In this book, it's turned around, and I mean, I don't know how people saw the original film, but it's actually in a lot of ways a very stupid movie, in my opinion, because it really doesn't go. First off, at some level, it's just implausible. This Glenn Close character is she's a very successful publishing executive, but she's supposed to be totally deranged. And you kind of wonder, how is she able to hold down this job that involves a lot of responsibility and money and everything else? But part of the time, she's actually like, one of these people who lives in a hovel with one light bulb. It doesn't quite add up. So part of the point of the book was that the original movie didn't really make a lot of sense.
The scene I love where a guy who's an agent and then he became head of the streaming service and is consequently very powerful man in Hollywood. He dated a very beautiful woman who just wanted sex all the time. He married her. Suddenly she didn't want sex with him anymore. And he meets in a deli with another guy who's also in the same situation. Is there a sex drought going on among Hollywood?
I don't know.
Does this inspire? Did you ever meet anyone who's in this situation? Sorry.
I think a high proportion of husbands in the United States might find that.
No, what Ron says, Jonathan's actually, everything he says about the number of people in the industry and the way it actually true out now to USC Film School. And there's like 40 of us in each class, which maybe 2 became directors, and 1 was like an editor. Those are like 20 years older. I don't know anyone who's like now. We had these things called black bags, and so you take your black bag with you. You would put all your scripts and all your shit in it, so people couldn't see that you were a film student because you're constantly harassing. The waiter would give you his card, the waitress would give you a card. It was a constant, come on, until they realized you couldn't help it. In which case, there's no more massage, no more sex.
I know sort of this sort of is a friend of mine from actually high school and college. Do you know Jonathan Rapp? No. We went to the same college, but we didn't know each other there. But he married a woman. She was director of primetime casting for CBS, and she had. I remember this years ago. She gave me her card unbidden, and it said Andrea Reed, director of primetime casting for CBS. There's no contact information. It was like a 19th century calling card. But I guess if you're head of primetime casting for CBS, the last thing you want is anyone ever getting in touch with you. So I'm gonna turn around. And may I ask you some questions?
It's really your night. You can ask me 2 questions.
So thoughts about the writer's strike?
I think they're very far apart. I can see both of them. I can see their beef, and that's why I think it's going to go on for a long time. Because the writers really are suffering out there. They get these contracts and they're tied up for a whole year, and they only get like 8 weeks of work, maybe 16 weeks. They're paid really well for 3 or 4 months, and maybe you can live for a whole year off 3 or 4 months. But I think you mentioned in this book, a lot of them are Uber drivers and stuff like that on the side. Your up-and-coming actress works at a weed dispenser.
Yeah.
It's got to be hard to pay the bills when you're only working 3 months out of the year. And there's this piece in New York Magazine that was very culture that was very astute. I thought it said, the big money in being a writer was like 30 years ago on Nash Bridges. You write 24 episodes of this crappy cop show. But you could sell it overseas, you could sell it on syndication, the money never stops coming. You write for Netflix, you get 1 check and then you're done. And then I guess Netflix backloaded this money, so you don't get big money until the 3rd season, but they always canceled after 2 seasons. So they're really, I can see why the writers are beefing. They're well paid in a way, but they're really having a hard time because there's more scripted content than in the entire history of Hollywood right now. And the streamers on the other side are saying, we're losing hundreds of millions of dollars on these projects. We have to cut costs every way we can. So I think we're going to see a big cutback in the number of shows. There's just too much content, too many shows, too many hours coming out each week. They're going to have to look to HBO as more of a model where you have like 1 or 2 things you're pushing at a time. So it's like 10 shows a week, like Netflix does. What do you think? Are you in the EU?
I'm not.
No.
So the second question, Tom Stoppard during the Tony show complained about, he felt that the quality of playwriting has been declining. Do you think that the quality of recent films shows a decline?
Well, there's this, everyone in Hollywood talks about the same, everyone in viewing talks about the same problem, which is that everything gets kind of funneled through with the superhero format, and you can do interesting things in superhero movies, but basically what they're all trying to do is find a reason to spend $200 million on digital effects. And everything's kind of built around that, like, oh, how are we going to do this? Oh, we're going to have a scene with 500 versions of Ant-Man all on the screen. It's kind of like the budget comes first, and then the visuals, and then the kind of like the connecting tissues kind of the last thing we think about. And I think they're kind of scraping the bottom of the barrel for ideas. Should we open up the questions?
Can I ask you one more question?
Yeah.
Do you think that, I know you watch some of the streaming shows as well. Have you seen any streaming shows the last few years that you thought were really good?
Yeah, there's not much. The Greats and Who was really good. Nicholas Hoult, very funny, playing the Emperor.
What was the first one?
The Greats. It's about Catherine the Great, who sort of slowly took over from the Tsar. German. And she sort of came in and took over Russia. And it's a very farcical comedy with a lot of anachronistic dialogue. People saying "bro," and half the people in 19th century Russia are black for some reason. So everything's very modern. It's kind of like the Marie Antoinette movie that Sophia did. Like everything's kind of given a modern.
Well, that's a topic because I remember I saw the Result Hop when I was in French school, and the lead was Vietnamese, and during the whole thing, I kept thinking, there are no Vietnamese people in like France, and like, so what about this whole content thing where 33.6% of a movie has to be, I love that it was minority, LGBTQ, or disabled, and I was thinking of like, I don't know, like a Paramount special where everyone's disabled in a different way. How funny that might look.
Yeah, that's the headline. I'm talking about the Oscar.
To be Oscar presumptive, right?
Yeah, but that sort of got reduced to, you have to check 2 out of 4 boxes in order for your film to qualify for the Oscars for Best Picture starting this year. But checking 2 of those 4 boxes is not going to be hard at all because you can do it with back office functions.
Right.
And even if your film is an indie, if it's any good, it'll get picked up by a major studio, and that studio has gay people on staff and people of color on staff and so on. So you don't really need to worry about it. And one of the boxes is just about internships anyway. Like all the big horror companies already have internships. But the headline box was the one everyone was worried about. It said you have to have a diverse cast or a diverse character. There has to be some theme of underrepresented minorities or something. So everyone's going, well, would The Godfather have been ruled out?
Right.
But The Godfather was put out by a giant corporation, Paramount, and I'm sure Paramount has lots of.
Nobody does next have to be Sicilian's petition to be a minority.
Yeah, they're not going to pretend like Sonny Corleone and black. That's not going to happen. I think people are making too much of that. I don't think it's going to really change anything because the worst you can say about it is that it's kind of squeezing out the little independent companies from competing for just this one Oscar, by the way. It only applies to the Best Picture Oscar. Right. All the others, they haven't changed the standard. You could say with a movie like Clerks maybe wouldn't qualify because it was homemade and it's just a group of friends. And they probably didn't have time to get a diverse group of crew together. But Clerks got picked up by Miramax, which was a unit of the Walt Disney Company, and the Walt Disney Company has all these diversity boxes.
There's always a way around.
Yeah, there's always. I don't think people should worry that it's going to affect.
No, in a way, it's a good thing. I mean, if you could actually get the people that it's intended to help. But as you said.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to see. They may alter the content of movies because they want to be part of a progressive project to be more diverse. But I think they're going to do it because of this Oscar requirement. Like if they did make a mob movie today, yeah, they probably would have a black character in it. I mean, they would pretend it's Sicilian, but they probably somehow get a black person in there.
Anything? Do you guys have any other questions?
Should we open up?
Yeah.
So please ask any questions you want, or say something that you thought was wrong. Say what your opinion of the question. Nothing. Go ahead.
Duro.
Hello, enjoyed your book very much, Jonathan. I happen to be a native of Los Angeles. I lived here for a long time.
Introduce yourself.
Oh, Jerome Murdoch. I live in New York City and grew up in LA. Spent the first 18 years of my life. I enjoyed the characters, the plot, everything else, but I very much enjoyed the atmospheres of Los Angeles, the topography, the foliage, the architecture, et cetera, et cetera. So I wonder if you could just talk a little bit about that and how I think you were only there for 6 months. So you picked up what, as I read it, what felt like a Los Angeles native's understanding of the atmosphere and ambiance of Los Angeles. And for a New Yorker to do that over 6 months, I thought was very impressive. So just talk about that for a bit, if you don't mind.
Well, as I say, I really like Los Angeles, which I didn't expect because I've been there in the past and really been on the outside and not understood it. But, and I moved around. I actually lived 3 different places during the time I was there. So that played some role.
Where
But
were you?
I lived in Topanga Canyon, which I didn't realize how far it was, the meetings I had. And then I lived in Hollywood, and people may not realize this, but there's an area of Hollywood that's just north of like Hollywood and Vine. It's actually lovely. It's really, really beautiful. And then I lived in this area, West Adams, that's kind of gentrifying, but is somewhat poor. It was actually a very affluent neighborhood in like 1905. Actually, that's another thing about LA that a lot of people don't know. It was one of the 10 biggest cities in America in 1920. So this idea that it just grew up in the 40s with the aircraft industry, this is a complete myth. But yeah, no, I mean, maybe part of it is that I really did like it. I think that, of course, the weather is unbelievable. And, you know, it's got great universities and all these wonderful neighborhoods that are very distinctive, you know, like Westwood and, you know, Silver Lake and, you know, we have a cousin lives in Altadena, which is a great place, and, you know, all these different.
What's your favorite part of LA? I love Santa Monica.
Well, obviously, my wife thinks it's too cold, because it is actually cold, much, you know, in Santa Monica. Like, you mean middle of summer, you're there in August, and you're like, wait, it's cold. Yeah.
Is it the case, whenever I've been in LA, I get the impression that all the people from New York and the Northeast all hang out with each other because they think that the West Coast people are too weird. But a lot of people in your bucket are this strange cult church, and you probably wouldn't run into too many people from New York without this church was everything but totally the same.
I think, you know, another thing that's very weird about LA is for people in the entertainment industry, it's very segregated, not by race, but by occupation. So like you go to a party of actors and they're all actors. Or you go to a party of cinematographers and most of the people involved in photography. And it's sort of like, you know, it gets to what you were talking about. You know, a director doesn't disdain to go to a party where there are people, all of whom are, you know, all of whom are not directors and aren't going to help him. You know, or producers are going to help him. So that's kind of, ruthlessness works out in a weird way. Maybe it's also the density of New York. You go to like a finance party and most of the people there aren't in finance. You know what I'm saying? But I don't know if people have had this experience.
Yeah, you mentioned this briefly, but I'm wondering how you account for the prevalence of cults and those kind of organizations in LA in particular. Is it attributable just to the fact that people are trying to strive and get ahead by networking with other people? It seems like cults have become a fascination of movies and TV. Obviously, they always have been, but especially recently, there are all these documentaries about them and stuff like that. So I'm just wondering why you think a lot of them tend to crop up in LA in particular.
Well, I have much ideas. Do you want to tackle that first?
I don't know how to answer that. You should, because you're looking.
Well, it's actually something, people don't realize this, but religious sects have been sprouting up in Los Angeles going way back. The Pentecostal sect was founded in Los Angeles, actually founded near Skid Row. This is like 1908. And interestingly, by the way, it was the first American Protestant sect that was interracial, which is obviously very commendable. But religious sects of all kinds have been started in LA, influential ones going way back. I mean, it's not just Scientology. But yeah, I think there are a whole bunch of reasons. One is alluded to in that book we were talking about, Day of the Locust, that all these people come out to Los Angeles and they think they're going to have a new life. And they're really looking to be inducted into some kind of group. Also true, and I say someone has deep love for actors and has done some acting in my life. I acted in high school and college. But many actors are people who are, you know, they're looking for answers, they're searching. And they often show up, in some cases they have very little education, and they're ripe to be, especially talented actors actually often, they're really ripe to be brought into cults. And you know, the way Scientology works is they go and they give you a test, and whatever you say on the test, they tell you the same thing. It's a personality test.
You're deeply wounded person.
Yeah, you know, it's really, I hate to be honest with you. I'm just being brutally honest. You're really screwed up. You're really trouble. You know what's funny though is I'm looking at the test here. you have so much potential. There's something extraordinary about you, but I'm just looking at this and you need a lot of help. I know I'm being cruel, but I'm just trying to be honest. This is what they want to hear. Someone's telling them the truth, that they're very troubled, and they also want to believe, I'm going to be a star, or I'm going to do something amazing.
Do you want to talk about the documentary, if you've seen it, on Scientology? Like the stuff that they basically like.
Oh, you're talking about the Lawrence Wright?
Yeah, they had like Tom Cruise when he's 20 years old, telling him the most perverted sexual things he's ever done on tape. And then every time he wants out, they're like, well, we have these tapes of yours where you're having sex with a moose in Canada. So give us $1 million, and they just fork the money over.
Well, John Travolta, they actually, yeah, that's right. They mentioned that they specifically, I guess I shouldn't be saying this publicly.
Say it.
Well, they said in the documentary that, yeah, they were quite openly blackmailing him. So, but yeah, no, I mean, I think it is a place where there was a guy who was involved in starting lawsuits against cults. I can't remember his name, who died a few months ago. And in the Times obituary, in this case, I think it was probably true. The Times obituary said, they had a quote from him saying, if there are 5 movie stars in your group, you're in a cult. There's probably some truth to that.
Are Hollywood actors dumber than New York actors? Because New York actors have to memorize the whole play. They gotta be pretty smart to do that. In LA, you just memorize one scene.
Well, I'll tell you this, I didn't understand until I started spending time in LA and getting invited to plays out there. But there are so many fantastic actors in LA. But what's sad is, they don't care whether you can act. It's really true, they don't care. The agents and the producers don't care. They're just interested in whether they think they can get you on a primetime show or a daytime show or whatever it is. We're here, somebody's in a play and they get rave reviews. Agents are like, oh, that's interesting. Maybe we should go see the show. But out there, you see people who are just amazing. And it's like, no, I don't have an agent. Nobody's interested. Nobody, it's like, well, yeah, they looked at my glossy. It was like, that was it.
Don't you think that people are in the cults to get a career? Don't you think it's about networking?
Maybe in some cases, people certainly said that about Scientology, but I think people are susceptible to recruitment into these cults in significant numbers in Los Angeles, much greater numbers than New York or Buffalo or Boston or et cetera.
Hi, I'm J.D. Alexander. I'm a friend of John and also a playwright. And my question, which you've had now 20 minutes to warm up because I asked you this in the pre-talk. Being both a playwright and a novelist, what is the different approach? Like, how did it feel to go, because I've written several plays, but I can never imagine myself writing a novel. What impelled you to change mediums? What was the process different? Do you think some stories are just better told as plays, that you could do things with a novel that you couldn't do as a play? Because I haven't read your novel, but just talking about it, it seems like there are lots of things that could work potentially as a play, but you chose to do it as a novel.
If I could add to that, a lot of his plays are about real people and real events, lightly fictionalized. There's a Masters of Johnson play. There's a play about the second wave feminists. There's a play about Pushkin, the poet who was killed in a duel. And this is totally your imagination.
Yeah.
You must be using totally different muscles.
I guess so. Yeah, mostly, yeah, that's true.
Yeah, his writing.
Why did I write the pandemic happened, and my wife and I was now texting. We were home alone for many months, and there was no hope whatever of getting a play produced, and nowhere to go. You were here in the pandemic, yes? Yeah. So you're home in your apartment.
I wrote a play.
Oh, you did, yeah.
All right, is there anything else or?
Another novelist I know who spent time living in LA said with horror when she first moved there, no one here reads. Is that fair? Is it a non-literary?
Probably much less, but I tell you what, they also have some fantastic bookstores. In fact, I see somebody nodding. In fact, one of the best bookstores I've ever been in was right on the beach in Venice. I forget the name of it. Downtown has some great bookstores too. But can you imagine? It's right next to Muscle Beach. Where the bodybuilders are working out, they have this fantastic used bookstore. And you're like, who knew? So I don't think that's quite fair.
Yeah, Venice Beach is about skateboarders, tattoo artists, and drug addicts. Anyone else?
I read the book, I really enjoyed it. Just some comments. I said before, your insight into the actor's play is really very empathetic and lovely, and how you acknowledge how much work goes into it, that most people skip, even someone as gorgeous as Vincenzo's working on Meisner on the side, and I loved that. And when you said, oh, no one's allowed to criticize something, you added an exclamation. You said you're criticizing someone's, the source of a child's college education, because this is their profession. So I'd say, like, all these things, you touch with an empathy, and you get into people's heads. Sometimes I wish I didn't know that someone thought, but like that, you are in the heads, and even as a playwright, you're implying it. Here you're getting in the heads and not telling us everything with dialogue, which is what playwrights do. So that's impressive. My question, I have two questions. One, it was a page turner, and it's a mystery, but there's comedy in it. There's story about relationships. There's a lot of relationships. There's also business stuff. But you even the business relationship, everything had the same. At the end of the chapter, you had to keep going. You have this page turner thing. How do you do that? And also, why Bombardier Press? Why did you choose that publisher?
They offered to publish it. I knew the people and they offered to publish it. But yeah, thank you for, it's very kind. Yeah, I don't think people understand how hard what actors do is. Yeah, both in the sense of to give a great performance, very few people could do it ever. And also in the sense that it's just a very, very tough occupation because, people don't treat, even successful actors. Carol, you knew Tony Savage? Did you know him? Oh, so I had a friend who worked at National Review, the magazine, named Tony Savage. He was a secretary for William Buckley. Well, not a secretary like, he did typing. He actually wrote a lot of letters that were supposedly Buckley's letters to famous people saying, oh, we loved your speech. Why don't you come meet with us? Which was a lot of what Buckley did. So Tony had a real job. I mean, in the sense that a real job, it was an intellectual job. And, but Tony had been an actor. He told me a story I found fascinating. He came to New York to be an actor from, I think, Wyoming or Montana, I think it was. And he said that first he couldn't find any work as an actor. And then suddenly he started getting cast in things. And he was cast as Antony in a production of Julius Caesar in the Park. I don't think it was Shakespeare in the Park, but this is something real. Like Julius Caesar, and there are critics there and everything else. And he got a good agent, and he got sent for an audition. And this is the early 70s. Tony, unfortunately, is no longer with us. And he said he got sent in this room, and one of the other people up for the role was Ben Gazzara. And I guess I'm dating myself by referring to Ben Gazzara. People are older will know Ben Gazzara was one of the most respected actors of the 70s. And he was a guy who starred in a lot of movies, like John Cassavetes movies and other things. And he said that was when he got out of the business. He said that he went to this audition, he realized, oh my God, Ben Gazzara is auditioning? I guess the equivalent today would be like, what would be the equivalent today of Ben Gazzara? Michael Shannon. Yeah. I don't know, but I mean, Michael Shannon is someone who, if Michael Shannon is auditioning, I got to find a new line of work. So yeah, it's very tough.
Well, thank you. You guys.
It's a great book. It's a lot of fun. It is a fast-moving read. And it has a surprise twist at the end, and it's really fun.
All right, thanks guys. So we have a little bit of a circuit here. If you can hold back on your applause for 10 seconds. We have a whole case of books there. Jonathan's going to sign books here, maybe?
Yeah.
And then we have a staircase downstairs, and there's wine, red and white.
So if you want to purchase them, they're discounted. They're $20. So I said I'd give you, what did I say?
Oh, I think it's giving us a third of the proceeds, which is really helpful because we're a nonprofit and we don't charge admission, so we apply for grants and sell art. We're at Atamian, Hovsepian.art, which I realize for non-Armenians is probably hideously difficult to spell. But if you take
QR codes everywhere.
there are QR codes everywhere. And I really believe we'll hear in the world that only writing and art can save the world. So buy some art, buy some books, buy our art if you like it. We have 3 shows. This is James Gordner, who's an American. Our mission is technically to show minorities, people of color, LGBTQ, women, artists, but we picked this tall, really funky white guy for our first show because he does beautiful art. The back we have a resident from Armenia who did these beautiful installation pieces, and downstairs we have a very funky sculpture, sextily type thing over a video that Atamian did, which is a beautiful. You have to listen to the video. It's actually a beautiful speech. And there's a reception, so please go downstairs, please buy a book, and thank you for coming.